Out of the gates and ready to go. OutKick 360 is back for the final week of 2022. Hutton with you and special guest host on this Tuesday edition, the Heisman winner, the head coach at Tennessee State University, and everything in between. He's the Renaissance man, Eddie George, in the house with me in Music City. Eddie, what's up, bro?
Man, I'm great, man. Good
Happy
seeing
holidays
you.
to you. Good Christmas?
Man, excellent Christmas. Did absolutely nothing but sleep, eat, drink, watch movies, watch football, play with my Bulldogs. It was great, man.
So,
Enjoyed it.
you know, some athletes, I guess entertainers, they have cheat days for their diet. Do you have like a cheat week? Is this your?
Yeah, that's understatement. Hey, I'm gonna have to go on a cleanse after this, man. Leading up to the week of Christmas, I did like this mini fast, and as you said, I'm just gonna just work out, eat clean, just really get in tune with my spirituality and so forth with this fast, and right around the last day, 7, I said, you know what? I'm going to have some hot chocolate, cookies, get in the Christmas spirit, and hadn't looked back since. I've had maybe like 3 Pizza Hut pizzas.
Stuffed crust
turkey. Nah, this the regular pan.
Oh, okay.
Regular pan, I don't think there's anything better than.
Do you remember
pizza.
the personal pan pizzas you could get for like reading so many books in school or whatever?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was after my time.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was. I was in my prime then, man. I was reading so many books then.
You read a lot.
That's the last time I read. Yeah. Now I just read your Instagram for inspirational tweets.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
You see the one that's today? Did you enjoy that one today?
I haven't seen yours today.
Yeah. Well, when you get time after the show, just make sure you peruse through it.
Eddie George 2727 is where you can follow him on Instagram, and he's posting things that he reads each morning. So you've got the cheat week going on, and you said you already do a meditation, so I'm not sure how you can get in more touch with your spirituality, as you mentioned.
Now, every day is trust me, I have to every day. The job that I'm in, I've got to stay committed to it.
The portal will make you do that.
The portal, yes, trying to find the right kids, dealing with these kids on a consistent basis, it'll drive you to that. But all in all, I'm very, very grateful, blessed, man. No big issues. Family's doing great. And just really immersing myself into this time of just enjoying my family and having a great sense of gratitude for things that I love, things that I love to do. I mean, for the next 3 hours, I'm sitting here talking with you about everything and anything in all sports, Titans football, college football.
We're going to kick back and have a good time.
Kick back, have a good time. So what else can be better?
Well, anything could be better for Withrow right now. Not because he's with his in-laws, but because of the travel situation. So I believe he was flying Southwest, and that's been a total disaster.
I heard.
And, chances are right now, I saw a tweet right before we started, 62% chance that your flight on Southwest has been canceled today or tomorrow.
Man.
Withrow was in that situation yesterday, so Chad early Monday morning found out that his flight had been canceled, not postponed, but canceled. So they loaded up the car, and they made the 13-hour drive to Nebraska, where Chad will be all week. Eddie's sitting in the seat today.
By the way, the seat's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I saw you have the seat cushion. Those are still yours, but
we've got another one, I think.
I just took a pillow. That's all.
Oh, okay.
I'm sitting on it.
Eddie, whatever you need, man, we got you. We've got Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine, and plenty of football discussion. We've got Mookie Betts coming up later in today's show, hour number 3. The former MLB AL MVP will be on with us. Plus, John McClain coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes. We'll talk all things NFL headlines and start to peek ahead to the playoff scenarios and some of the matchups that John likes, plus MVP and much more. Nathaniel Hackett fired with 2 games to play. I thought he was going to be one and done. I didn't think he would be 16 and done, 16 games and done. But what an epic disaster in year 1. And we can get into the details of this, but you just, from week 1, Eddie, the decision in Seattle to kick that 64-yard field goal, and the time management, and not putting Wilson on the field to win the game in Seattle, to now, and Wilson hasn't been good. He's been a disaster as well.
Yes,
but to me, Nathaniel Hackett was the picture next to the definition of the phrase "in over your head." It's not his fault that the Broncos hired him, but you could tell from the jump he was not ready to be a head coach.
Well, I didn't have a chance to watch every game that he's coached in, but I'm well aware of the the various mistakes that have been made, the missteps.
Yeah.
And really, when you looked at Russell Wilson coming to the Broncos, it looked like, Super Bowl written all over that organization this year. With that great defense, Russell Wilson at the quarterback position, the pieces and parts surrounding him, you thought that, okay, this is a match made in heaven. There's no way that this could be a losing season. At worst, it would be, wild card, somewhere around there. But it has been abysmal for Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, that organization. Last weekend was it. I mean, the bottom just completely fell out. That was a lifeless football team. Looked like they just mailed it in, gave up on the coaching staff, everything else. 51 points.
Yep.
Russell Wilson sacked yet again 6 times. I mean, it's been multiple. He's been sacked the last 2 weeks 12 times.
And Wilson also looks lifeless. But the deal with Russell Wilson is his deal, his contract. So they're not getting out of that anytime soon. They've got the guarantees locked in for a few more years here. And then I felt like Hackett was out. I'm just surprised they did it with 2 games left, which tells you just how bad it was. And the press conference today, the spin on it was, hey, fans, we hear you. And they're going ahead to get ready for the offseason with their coaching search. But through Week 16, the Broncos were last in points per game, last in third down percentage, 26th in yards per game. And of their 11 losses, 8 of them were by a possession or just one possession or less, like a field goal, not even needing a touchdown. And to me, several of those can come down to management.
Time management.
All of that. Decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
Hackett was not good when they needed him the most, and it was in those crucial moments.
No question. And it definitely showed for sure.
Looking around some of the other big headlines, J.J. Watt has announced his retirement after 12 seasons. He announced this on social by saying he's done playing any more home games for Arizona. They have 2 games left on the road. But, Eddie, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He is a 6-time or 5-time first-team All-Pro. And in 12 seasons, there was about a 3 or 4 year stretch where the guy was just totally unstoppable in Houston.
Dominant.
First ballot Hall of Famer.
No question. No question.
And an overall just great team guy, too.
J.J. Watt was an absolute monster, a beast. I mean, you talk about that run. 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. It's a slew of sacks. Just a dominant force on the defensive side of the football. It's created all kind of problems for offenses to try to block this dude. I mean, of course, first ballot Hall of Famer. 2028 is when he's going to be up for, I guess, eligible for to become a Hall of Famer. But the dude was an absolute problem.
Here's the 4-season span, 2012 to 2015. 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards in 4 years.
All right.
4 first-team All-Pro selections. So in that span, All-Pro every year. 4 Pro Bowls. God. That's a no-brainer if you're a first-team All-Pro. 69 sacks in 4 years. The second closest in the NFL was 50.5.
69.
And he was 19 sacks ahead over a 4-year span. And just a little glimpse. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame 4 years by itself.
Absolutely. And now he can transform this and transition it to something else, maybe television, maybe coaching, maybe GM, maybe actor. I mean, the world is his oyster at this point in time. I mean, just kudos to him. And it's good that you can ride into the sunset kind of on your own terms. I'm pretty sure he can probably squeeze out another year or 2,
Yeah, I think he either had 1 year left or he's about to be a free agent. I can't remember which.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, but he can squeeze out another year.
But the thing was, and I thought this, it feels like last year now. It was this year. It was right after week 4, or it was week 4, where he had to miss the game against, I can't remember who the game was against. He had AFib. And he literally was playing the next week after having the heart condition.
Oh, my God.
And he was upset. He was more upset that the word got out about his condition than he was having to speak on it, So I wonder if that also played a factor in everything this year.
I would think so.
Yeah, but again, he played literally 7 days later, which is just crazy.
That part I didn't know about.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
Tua Tagovailoa may be done for the season. Another concussion, so at least 3 that we know of, according to the Dolphins. And he's now back in protocol with 2 games left. They have the Patriots and the Jets. And, I mean, now it's Teddy Bridgewater. The Dolphins, if they win the final 2 games, they'll be in the postseason. But it will be most likely on the arm of Teddy Bridgewater now.
Well, yeah, Tua, that's a tough situation there. I mean, as an organization, even if he clears the protocol, you got to shut him down.
I think so too.
I mean, this is the 3rd one, and the first one was scary. The second one was like, whoa, maybe we should think about shutting him down now.
But they kept him out an extra week even after he cleared.
Yeah. And the thing about concussions, and I'm no doctor, but I just know that once you get one, the likelihood of you getting another one is extremely high.
Yeah.
And how many times you've seen him hit the back of the head 3 times, and it's always been that way. And there's no way you can't lay a quarterback down gently. It's a violent game. They're trying everything to take the helmet out of the game and head-to-head contact, and it's not that. It's that second hit when you hit the ground that there's no type of padding. There's not enough padding that can protect your brain from that jolt. And this is going to be an issue ongoing for him moving forward for the rest of his career. Steve Young had these issues. Troy Aikman had these issues. So hopefully,
and now they have a more strict protocol in place league-wide.
As they should.
And, I mean, Tua did not play well this past weekend. He had 3 picks on 3 consecutive possessions against Green Bay, and Green Bay ultimately wins that game down in Miami in the 90% humidity that was South Beach, Miami Gardens. But he leads the league in passer rating. He leads the league in 3rd down passer rating and red zone passer rating. And now the Dolphins will turn things over to Bridgewater. The good news is, if you're a Dolphins fan, you've got 2 receivers who get theirs regardless of who's playing.
Oh, man, they're nasty.
Doesn't matter who's playing.
They're nasty.
With Waddle and Hill.
Waddle and Hill. Oh, my gosh. Those 2 are dynamic.
So if we see Tua in the playoffs, he will join quite the crop in the AFC. So here's the group, Eddie, and you tell me about the future of the AFC and how difficult it is to kind of crack this code now. They've got, right now, Josh Allen. These are teams who have clinched. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Justin Herbert. And of those 5, of course, Jackson hasn't returned yet, but the thought is he could return this week, and if not, he'll be back by the playoffs. But if you throw Tua in the mix there, okay, and then you've got one other spot that, is up for grabs, but it could be Trevor Lawrence, could be Mike White with the Jets.
Man, look.
But it's to me, there's the AFC quarterback crop compared to the NFC crop is vastly different.
Vastly different. I mean, you just ripped it off. Joe Burrow is probably I'm putting my money on Joe. Out of all the quarterbacks you named just now, it's Joe. Cincinnati is playing exceptional football right now, and Joe is, he led them last year to the Super Bowl. Of course, you got Mahomes. My dark horse, I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence. He's been phenomenal since, November the 1st. 14 touchdowns.
Yes. 1
interception.
Yes.
Key victories over the Titans. And last week took care of business in New York.
He's locked in. Locked
and loaded, man. The Jaguars are extremely dangerous.
They feel like Cincinnati of last year in a way. They're not as good, but they are the dark horse team in the shadows. No one's talking about that's going to have to.
Not as good. What do you mean?
So last year, going into the postseason, Jamar Chase was it was amazing.
Yeah.
Mixon was better last year than this year. And they had just started to turn into a pass first team offense, and defensively they were getting enough stops. I thought they this year they're a good defense. I thought last year they became more of a better version of the group we're seeing right now. But in order to do that, they hosted the Raiders. No one was watching that game. Everyone watches the playoffs, but if you're watching Raiders Bengals, you're watching Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I got you.
And then they had to go on the road.
Mm-hmm.
They did that, Titans, and then Kansas City, and then they end up in the Super Bowl. And I think Jacksonville, to your point, though, I think they can be the sneaky team if they're able to get in. They'll have to beat the Titans in Week 18, which
it's going to be.
I'm on board with.
That's the way the Titans been looking. It seems like it could go that way. Their defense is opportunistic.
Yes.
ETN has been phenomenal,
but they don't have nearly as many sacks as last year. Like they're not pressuring the quarterback, but
they're getting the turnovers though.
Yes.
They're getting interceptions. They're creating fumbles. They're creating those turnovers.
And ETN,
if you are running the football right now extremely well, you are in a great position. And the fact that it's not all on Trevor to win the games. One interception since November the 1st.
Yep.
That says a lot. That's the formula for success.
Coming up, Eddie's got his top 5 running backs playing today, plus his top 5 all time. No surprise as to which list was more difficult for him to fill out. We'll get to that. Plus, when we come back, we're going to recap Week 16 across the NFL. A bit later, we preview the college football playoff. His Buckeyes taking on the Georgia Bulldogs, and Michigan taking on TCU. We'll get Eddie's thoughts on both of those matchups. But we give the big storylines across Week 16 and peek ahead to Week 17 in the National Football League. Eddie George with us today for OutKick 360.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined today by SEC Mike. You guys know who he is. Michael Bratton joins us on the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Trey. It's always a treat having you on my show, that SEC podcast. So, hey, it's an honor to do your show.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and it's the holiday season. We've got bowl games going on. We got the transfer portal going on, signing day stuff going on. It's chaotic. It's never a day off in college football, as you know. So let's start in the transfer portal, Michael, where we have seen, I think I saw a number that there are around 1,500 players in the transfer portal as we are having this conversation right now. And I would love to know your thoughts on how you think this has played out since the first day it opened, and then realizing we have got until January 19th, if I'm not mistaken, until this thing closes. What's your early thoughts on how this has played out?
Well, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, to be honest with you, Trey. I keep track of all the players from the SEC that have jumped into the portal, and A&M's got over 20. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, they're close to those figures as well, just below A&M. But man, it's absolutely chaotic, and I don't know if it's a good for the sport. I don't know if it's bad for the sport, but I certainly think that teams like LSU and Ole Miss, I think they've kind of laid a blueprint. If you want to turn over your roster in a single offseason, it can be done. And I bet you Billy Napier, of course, they're kind of doing it now, but I bet Billy Napier kind of wishes he would have taken that tactic as well.
From 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Happy holidays to you. Happy New Year coming up with Eddie George. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Withrow back with us next week. He's back with us in 2023. Some of these NFL teams, Eddie, done. We know that. There's several teams that are still alive, roughly 10 to 11 in each conference, based on results of this past weekend. And let's run through the big headline results. And let's start with Dallas and Philadelphia. The Eagles, without Jalen Hurts, go into Dallas with Gardner Minshew and nearly win this game. Dallas, it took 4 turnovers from the Dallas defense, 4 takeaways for Dallas to ultimately win this game by 6, 40-34. But I think Philadelphia shows, at least me, without Jalen Hurts, they can still pick up the slack and make things happen. They've got a wide receiving core, a run game that travels, a defense that can flat out get after the quarterback. And while they give up 40 points in this game, there was a point where if they just run the clock out, they don't turn it over, they leave Dallas with a victory. And Mike McCarthy's probably losing his job, according to reports. Like there were those that were saying he needed to beat Philly to keep his job in Dallas.
At 12-4.
Because Sean Payton is knocking.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, man. Now that's news to me. But
I mean, he's done a great job. I'm not endorsing that yet, but
they were 12-4 going into this game, correct?
Yes.
And you're talking about Mike McCarthy losing his job. That's another story. But
so 11 wins.
11 wins, excuse me. But still, though, I mean, that's huge.
Right now, they're on the road at Tampa.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. You know, what I learned from that game, is to your point, is that Philly is dominant. I mean, for Minshew to go in there and basically was 4 turnovers away from pulling off a win. Yep. They were winning the football game, I think, by 10 at one point in time. And then the mishaps happened, and they still were in it with a drive to go in that ball game to probably tie it up. And to me, you know, that's a game where it can get out of hand quickly. You know, you turn the ball that many times, it can turn into a blowout. But the Eagles were still very competitive on the road with your backup quarterback. Your MVP caliber quarterback is out.
Yep.
To me, they're head and shoulders above the rest of the NFC. And I'm not going to. I'll put 2 teams in that. San Francisco and Philly are the cream of the crop when it comes to the NFC.
So, Philly never punted in this game. You had A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith go over 100 yards. Minshew was phenomenal, except the very late turnover.
Yep.
Philadelphia, though, has 7 turnovers in their last 2 games. And I wonder, you know, if you start to look at the trend of how you beat them, that's the only way, to me.
They have them beat themselves.
Yeah, and you had 4 in the loss to the Cowboys. The Cowboys had 4. The Eagles had 4 in their other loss of the season, which was to Washington. And meanwhile, on the flip side, Dak Prescott's got the biggest interception percentage of any quarterback starting right now. You know, he'll also turn it over.
Yeah, he has.
And I have a feeling that they're not going to lean on the run like they should in the postseason, and that will keep them from advancing as far as they can.
You're talking about the Cowboys.
Dallas.
Yeah.
With Pollard and with
Elliott.
And
Ezekiel, just hand the ball off. But for some reason, they want to spin it all over the yard. They want to score points. They want to put up, you know, big numbers, and that gets them in trouble. I think when I look at Dak, you know, less is more. Throw the ball. If he throws it more than 30 times, that's not a good formula for success for Dallas because of the fact that he turns the ball over. If he's throwing it between 20 and 25 times, play action, managing third downs, allowing Ezekiel and Pollard to control the game, they'll be in great shape. But at some point, I think, you know, they're going to want to open it up and let them have at it. You know, so and that is a recipe for disaster when it comes to Dallas and their post-game hopes of going to a Super Bowl. I think they're very talented.
Yeah,
I think they're
agree.
a really good football team. Their defense, for as good as they are, they still give up a lot of big plays. I mean, they give up a lot of yards. I don't know if they can come up with that one big stop that they need to have against the elite football teams. I think the Eagles helped them more last game than they created those opportunities defensively for themselves.
So from what you've seen with and without Jalen Hurts, those that are not going to vote him as MVP, they're either going to point to the injury and they're going to then turn and hand it to Patrick Mahomes. It's nothing Mahomes hasn't done. It's just I think Hurts has proven in a prove-it year what his value is in this offense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other side of the coin for the naysayers would be like, he's a system quarterback. This is set up perfectly for him. Meanwhile, the other candidates, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, you can put them in any system, and they're putting up these numbers.
I don't know about that.
I'm reading off the argument to you.
I mean, Allen, same thing. I mean, he's in a good system. I mean, you just can't say you can plug him into any system and he's going to thrive.
He's their leading rusher too.
Yeah, he's their leading rusher too. I mean, he runs the ball. They concern me more than anything else, the Bills, because they don't have a run game that you can hand it off to. When your quarterback is running it and throwing it, late in the year, at some point, one ding, one tweaked ankle, one little deal with the shoulder, and now you're in deep trouble with that. So you got to have somebody that you can lean on in the run game, a running game, a run back by committee, or a running back that's hot that you can balance off of, because that's a dangerous deal when you're just one-dimensional in terms of your entire offense is on your quarterback running the football and throwing it. It's going to spell trouble for you in the end if it gets dinged up in the playoff game.
Packers down the Dolphins, 26-20. We touched on Tua and the turnovers late in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, Rodgers stepped up and made big throws.
Mm-hmm.
And here's Green Bay. They needed a lot of things to go in their favor, and they got all of it. Everything lined up to their game. They had to win. They won. They're at 7-8, but they're still in line for that 7 seed. And their path now is they have to win out. They're against Minnesota at home. Then they're on the road, they're home again against Detroit. So they have back-to-back home games now at Lambeau. And they need either Washington to lose one of their final 2 games, or they need the Giants to lose out.
Mm-hmm.
Washington has lost 3 or 4 straight. The Giants have been on a tailspin as well. So that's certainly more possible, I think, than Green Bay winning back-to-back games now.
But
we can see Rodgers in.
I think we'll see that happen. And now that they taste a little blood, think about the beginning of the season for Green Bay, and everybody really counted them out and wondered if Rodgers should still be the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
He was in and out of the lineup and so forth.
It's hard to bet against him.
At this point, now that he tastes blood and the way that they won last week, I think Green Bay coming in has a lot momentum going into the postseason versus have to rely on Washington or New York to lose.
Yeah, and you've got, they're opportunistic. They set up things late,
Mm-hmm.
and then Rodgers is making some great throws, man.
It's Aaron Rodgers, man.
Yeah, and he's having that young core actually come together now at the right time too.
Yes.
So, I'm not betting against Rodgers. I'm also, Chad and I discussed this last week, Eddie. I'm not hating the fact that we could go into a postseason without Rodgers or Brady. And if you would ask me that a year ago, I would say this is awful for the league. But now it's, I don't think I could also say the Packers are probably better off as a lower seed than the top seed that they've been whenever they've been in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure. Yeah.
No pressure.
There's nothing, facing them. They're
Aaron
not hearing that
Rodgers
buzz.
Without pressure. Ooh, it's
been a while.
That's a
It's
deadly
been a while.
deal, right?
It's not going through Lambeau, but
Right.
the team. It's not like the NFC is the daunting schedule
No.
that we're going to see in the AFC.
And I will say this, having been a Philadelphia Eagle fan for most of my life and watching them through the years, having a home field advantage in Philadelphia is probably not the greatest thing because that sense of panic when things don't go well in that first playoff game, and you get a team like Green Bay that may come in with nothing to lose and, you're down by 21 in the first quarter. And it's like, okay, we're a little off. Then things don't go that I can see that playing out, So No, Green Bay, if they get in, they're going to be dangerous because of that factor right there. Aaron's done it. He's been there before. And without pressure, like you talked about, when nobody's expecting you to do anything, that's when he's going to be at his best.
Keep in mind, right now, Green Bay, if they got in as the 7th seed, and this would mess up the seeding because that would include a win over Minnesota. So it would depend on what San Francisco does too. But right now, they'd be on the road at Minnesota for the wild card weekend. Now, San Francisco has owned the Packers. They have not lived up to expectations because the 49ers have gone on the road to Green Bay and won multiple times, including with Jimmy G, maybe now with Brock Purdy. The Panthers take care of the Lions. The Lions are knocking on the door. They were about to be America's darling team, and they lose 37-23 to now the 6-9 Carolina Panthers, who, if they win out, they will be the NFC South champions. They play Tampa Bay this coming weekend, this Sunday. The Panthers, Eddie, this is an Eddie George game.
Yes, it
320 rushing yards against Detroit's defense, who had been pretty good against the run all season. And the Panthers gashed them. First half, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns on 12 carries to open the game. And they had 240 yards at halftime. 12 carries, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns to open the game.
You want to know why? It was cold. You would figure that Detroit, being from Detroit and practicing in the cold, would be ready for that. I think it had to have been about.
I thought that played more of a factor late in the game than at the start.
The cold. No. I think it would, because they're indoor team. Detroit is theoretically an indoor team in a cold city. So you pull them outside the element. And I figured that was going to happen that way. That Carolina was like, okay, you're going to play smash mouth football. This is coming straight down your throat. Let's see if you can handle it. And it wasn't
This is
pretty.
a franchise best, though. You know, they've traded away McCaffrey, and they just had their franchise best day rushing. 320 yards. And overall offense, too. 570 total yards against the Lions. The Lions' defense has been atrocious. It's mainly been their passing attack or passing defense. Right. Not the case here. And the only detriment to Carolina in this game is they lost J.C. Horn to a broken wrist. He has 4 picks on the season. But Carolina could sneak their way in, and they've got the head-to-head matchup against Brady. That is down in Tampa this coming Sunday. Tampa wins 19-16. And, here's Brady somehow pulling the rabbit out of the hat again.
Of course.
He gets the opportunity late in that game in Glendale, and he goes down and he gets the game-winning field goal. This is after they trailed by 10, after he goes down and gets the touchdown. But just, I thought, way too conservative play calling by Tampa throughout the game. Gave Arizona a chance, and they were leading late. And then when Brady had the final possession,
you knew it was over.
Yeah.
Typical
the only
Tom
question
Brady.
was, is Suck Up going to make the kick?
Right.
Right.
When Tom is in that position, I'm betting on Tom every single time. He's done it time and time again throughout his entire career on the biggest stage in the Super Bowl and playoff games and meaningful games during the regular season. It's like clockwork for him. You put him in that position to win the game at the end, he's going to find a way. This
is worse than the final year in New England offensively, but it feels like Brady in 2019 to me. Where I was on the sideline with Titans Radio at the time in Foxborough, and that wild card game where the Titans won, you could feel the air just sucked out of Foxborough, and many thought that Brady was done, but they thought he was retired at the time. Turns out he didn't. He goes to win the Super Bowl the next year, but he wasn't. He didn't look the same, and I wonder, you think he's done? Do you think does he look the same to you this year? Or is it more about the O-line and everything in front of him?
It's a combination of everything else. What helps Tom is a run game. And let's be honest, they don't have that. Leonard Fournette was his saving grace when he came down to Tampa Bay. He were able to run the ball and play great defense. And you don't have that balance that he's accustomed to having and now fully fall. And this is the worst I've seen Tom play, okay? With the turnovers that he's had, you're looking like, whoa, this is not
6 picks in the last 3 games.
Yeah, and that's it. So, and he's 45 years old. at some point in time, you're going to say, okay, this has to be it. And it appears that this is it for Tom and moving forward. I don't know if the organization can afford to continue to do this.
Yeah.
And
I think he's done in Tampa. I'm just not sure where he links up. He was linked. Vrabel that's going to be an obvious pair.
Yeah.
Sean Payton was paired with him even last year in the investigation that came out with Dolphins ownership. Sean Payton and Brady was on the yacht and all that. Yeah, so they were linked together. San Francisco was also one. He would play back where
it all started.
Yeah,
interesting. Now that's
he could also go back to New England,
or he can go to NBC
or Fox.
Fox, right? In
the $320 million or whatever it is contract. Yeah, it's better than the coaching salary, isn't it?
You know what? At some point in time, like, well, you got that sitting out there for you.
Yeah,
$320 million
plus, probably. Yeah.
Like, hey, you know what?
10 years.
Hey, I'm good. What else is there? What, 8 rings? He's got 7, right?
He just loves the game, man.
Hey, I love it too.
I love watching him play.
You can talk about it.
I love watching him play.
I do too, man. That's great to have the world is your oyster with Tom Brady. He's got the world by the tail, man. That's awesome.
Same with Patrick Mahomes right now and the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Seahawks 24-10, and it didn't even feel that close. 12-3 now, Kansas City, and the Seahawks fall to 7-8, and it feels like they're really on the outside looking in. They are standings wise, but it just doesn't feel like this Seattle team is going to pick up the pace over the final 2 weeks of the season. Kansas City didn't commit a turnover for the first time in 10 games. They didn't miss any field goals. They didn't miss any PATs. Committed fewer penalties. And then you have the Seahawks, who gave it away a couple of times.
Right.
And Kenneth Walker III, while he's back and he's doing well, he can't be everything. And right now, Seattle's not that team. I wonder, though, if you would buy into the cold weather factor as well for Seattle, based on the way they warmed up. The Seattle Seahawks, members of the offense, came out and were warming up without any layers on, just shorts trying to send a message, and then they roll up at Arrowhead.
Right.
And, I mean, it's minus 12 wind chill.
Right.
Minus 12, and they proceed to not do anything. They scored 10 points. And that was it.
Right. I mean, all that show, Vaselined up, glistening muscles out there. Like, okay, we get it. You're really, it really is affecting your mindset for you to go out and do that, right?
Yes. So here's warm-ups, and you can see them here. They're.
So why have the mask on? Why the mask and the gloves? You're out there with no shirt on. Hey, if you want to do it, do it. Don't have the hand warmers and the face mask. Nah, go out there, with no helmet on, no hats, nothing.
My guess is, though, Kansas City came out and warmed up like normal.
Yes,
But
you know what? I'll say this about Kansas City. It seemed like all year they played to their level of competition. They haven't been the dominant team that we're accustomed to seeing. They're playing teams that they should beat by, 2 touchdowns, 10 points, 17 points. They're in way too many dogfights this year. And it could be that spell where you kind of get complacent a little bit and you kind of relax. Say, hey, Patrick's going to go ahead and find a way to win this game. Let's just keep it close. They're not. Yeah. They don't have that dominant mindset.
And they've been turning it over.
And very undisciplined.
Yeah.
Penalties, turning the football over. I just don't know if they can just turn it on the next 2 weeks and build that momentum, against a team like a Jacksonville, like against a Buffalo Bills or Cincinnati. You know what I'm saying? I just don't know, because I've been watching them all year long, and they have yet to really, with the exception of last week, play sound, disciplined football without shooting themselves in the foot.
So, and also, I mean, speaking of the Chiefs' offensive turnovers, defensively, they have 16 takeaways right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's 23rd in the NFL. Last year at this time, they had 29 takeaways. That was 4th best. And that was what allowed them to have that slow start a year ago.
Yep.
And then get right back to, hosting Cincinnati for the AFC Championship game. So they're not getting many takeaways to give the offense an extra possession or two, and when the offense is turning it over, you get these tight ball games.
Yeah.
But you still have Patrick Mahomes, and they're 12-3.
And yeah.
Coming up, let's dive into MVP race across the NFL. The dark horse candidate that all of a sudden nationally is starting to pick up some steam, and he already was for Offensive Player of the Year. And what he can accomplish over the final 2 weeks of the season could push him into the MVP category. And in a year where people have been bouncing back and forth between Mahomes and Hurts, I wonder, I'll get Eddie's take, on if this non-quarterback can actually win it, and for his position the first time ever. That's next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests, because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about, like, do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, oh, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it, and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out, because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around, and everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
It really is the have and have-nots when you begin to look at the AFC quarterbacks and the NFC quarterbacks. Welcome back, OutKick 360 across the OutKick network with Eddie George in for Chad Withrow. I'm Jonathan Hutton, 6th and Peabody, our location. Coming up, John McClain in about 30 minutes. And then hour number 3, we will be joined by Mookie Betts, former AL MVP with the Dodgers and, at the time, the Red Sox. Speaking of MVPs, here are the odds. OutKick.com/bet is where you can go to place your wager through DraftKings on the player that you think features the best return on investment right now. Odds-on favorite is Patrick Mahomes. He was plus 165 prior to the injury news for MVP, and then Hurts got hurt, and last week he was minus 225, and Mahomes wins again, so he's the odds-on favorite at minus 500. By the way, I'm going to go through their ages. Mahomes is 27. You've got Burrow, who's currently with the second-best odds, plus 700. He was plus 1,000, but he's moved up because the Bengals keep winning. Joe Burrow's 26 years old. And Josh Allen, 26 years old, plus 800, followed by Jalen Hurts. And then there's Justin Jefferson. A wide receiver, Eddie, has never won most valuable player in the NFL. His odds have gone down to win it. He's now plus 13,000. He was plus 10,000. But over the next 2 weeks, if he averages 122 yards per game, he will have 2,000 yards on the season. And no receiver has ever had a 2,000-yard season like we've seen at running back. We haven't seen it. Calvin Johnson nearly did it.
I thought he did it.
He was about 50 yards short.
Shy. Right.
Yeah.
Right, which is amazing, and he's
one less
game, and the fact that he's playing with Kirk Cousins, no disrespect, but
with Jefferson, yeah, you're
with
right.
Jefferson,
yeah,
okay, in a conference where the NFC North is Green Bay, it's Chicago, it's cold, so it's going to come the next 2 weeks is going to be at Green Bay,
yes,
at Chicago,
yes.
And if he gets 2,000 yards in the elements like that, you got to respect that. $2,000 for a receiver, and he is with the quarterback is not Brady, not Mahomes, not Burrow,
not Rodgers, back-to-back MVP. Yeah.
So yes, that's pretty strong, because you can take a receiver out of the game. You can roll coverage to him. You can do so many different things. So for him to put up these numbers and to be this consistent week after week, again with Kirk Cousins, is pretty remarkable.
And you make a good point, because normally if that's Devontae Adams, Rodgers is the MVP.
Yeah, Rodgers is the MVP.
Right? Yeah. Right. So, yeah, you're right. We don't immediately put Kirk Cousins in the mix, and he's got a 2,000-yard receiver. And I'm not arguing against that either. I'm not arguing for Cousins to be in the mix. But what Jefferson's done over the last 3 weeks, if he carries this over, I think he can actually get it. Now, it's going to take some swaying of the mindset of, the MVP's a quarterback award, because that's how people vote.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last 3 weeks, Jefferson's been phenomenal all year. Last 3 weeks, 35 catches, 479 yards, an average of 160 yards per game. He's going to get his, man.
Oh,
he's averaging 100 yards for the season per game.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And he's on a winning team, too, doing it in a big way. So we'll have to wait to see if he can pull it out, man. But I tell you what, for him, again, to put up the numbers that he's been able to put up in this offense has been remarkable. 2,000 yards for receiving. In the history of the NFL, that's remarkable. I think he should be, right up under there, in terms of like top 3 for MVP voting right at this point in time.
More impressive what Cooper Kupp did last year or what Jefferson's doing now, because he's not going to Jefferson's not going to get to the Triple Crown. I don't think it's going to take a big slip by Adams. Adams has 12 touchdowns. To Jefferson's 8. Tyreek Hill is also, all over the map in terms of yardage and catches. You've got A.J. Brown, who's doing kind of the, give or take 100, 200 yards, the same type of production on 80 receptions. It's an impressive year for wide receiver play.
No question. Definitely. A.J. Brown, in these parts where we are, it's still...
Yeah. Still stings?
Still stings to say that. We see his production. But Tyreek Hill and Waddle, oh my gosh. Those two, Miami, oh, man.
And they were putting up big numbers even without Tua.
Without Tua, right. So they're deadly. But no, it's almost like the league is flipped, where when I was playing, you could pick any team and find an exceptional running back. You had to have that bell horse running back you can rely on that can carry it in 30 and 30 out. And now it's hard to find that in the run game. You have a handful of guys at the top, and then that's it. Whereas now receivers have replaced that, where you have Chase and you have A.J. Brown, you have Waddell. The list goes on and on of the great receivers, Jefferson and so forth, that are playing in this league.
I know you have a Heisman vote. If you had an MVP vote, are you going with Mahomes right now?
I'm going to go with Mahomes and Jalen Hurts right now, neck and neck.
I had Hurts leading the race. The injury, I think, is going to...
You think it hurts him?
Yeah, I think it hurts him.
Oh, man. Okay.
Recency bias there. Headlines when we return, plus Eddie previews Ohio State, Georgia.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the second hour is here. OutKick 360 rolls on. Glad you're with us. Hope everyone had a happy holiday season. Merry Christmas and everything in between. Happy New Year coming up. Eddie George will be celebrating. There's no doubt about that. Eddie's in for Withrow. Withrow's celebrating in Nebraska this week. And we'll be doing some celebrating with the New Year's 6 bowl games. And what's on tap this week, plenty of good football across college football. And I say that, of course, the college football playoff is factoring into why I'm saying there's going to be good football. I have no idea with some of these teams and how they show up anymore, with who's in, who's out, who's opting out, who's transfer portal, all of this. But the New Year's 6 bowl games, Tennessee, Clemson, Orange Bowl.
You know what? That game is awesome because of the matchup, number one. But the fact that it's the Orange Bowl, you have two teams that are orange. That game should go to teams that have the color orange in their uniforms, right?
Well, I'm thankful that what could have happened where you have the perfect storm and you end up with Clemson, and it's not. I mean, they would have earned it, I guess. That where you have Clemson getting into the college football playoff, or you don't, and you have a situation where more chaos happens, and Clemson would have played Alabama in this game. And it's just a normal matchup. I wanted something new and fresh, and this is what we get. You know, it's not Clemson-Bama, even in a non-playoff year.
Right.
We get the Vols taking on the Tigers, and what is a matchup of two quarterbacks for the future? You have Klubnik and then Milton and you get a good gauge, a glimpse of
And
what's to
going to
come.
happen? What's to come
with
for
both of those.
for both teams? Yeah.
Alabama does not have a single player opting out. Bryce Young and Will Anderson are both playing in this game. We know they're going to be in the NFL next year.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, I want to stress this, not in the college football playoff. And their top stars are playing in this game against Kansas State in the Cotton Bowl.
Which is remarkable. I
Sugar
think.
Bowl, excuse me. We'll get to the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah. It's good to see that for college football. And it's a buy-in for Nick Saban to say, hey, although we're not playing for technically a championship, you have a chance to play one more game with your teammates and ride this last one out. And not take the approach of, well, if I'm not getting anything out of this in terms of a ring, then I'm going to look out for my future and get ready for the NFL draft, which there's nothing wrong with that. I
get it.
I get it too. This is business. College football is big business. It's $1 billion business, and these young men are smarter than we give them credit for. They understand that it's a business, and they're going to do what's in the best interest for their future. And I get it, but you have to also commend these young men to say, hey, you know what? This is still a team game. These are my brothers I'm playing with. I want to send them off and lead them into, the next offseason with some momentum. And I'm going to play this last game with them. There's something to be said for that nowadays. So that's refreshing to hear.
And there's a culture to that with Saban and what he's done in Tuscaloosa, getting those. And I was surprised. Maybe not with one or the other, but just that both, and that not a single player has opted out.
Which is
playing against Kansas State.
Yeah.
Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU for the college football playoff. It starts with Michigan and TCU kicking things off on Saturday afternoon, and it's followed by Georgia, Ohio State. Just first glance, what do you think about the matchup for the Wolverines and the Frogs?
Well, I think it's going to be a physical battle. The resilience of TCU is their heart. There's nothing really, quote unquote, sexy about this team outside of they play hard, and they are going to give you everything they've got for 60 minutes plus.
Yeah.
I think they've had 4 or 5 games where they won it on the last play of the game. And they fell a yard shy of that in the Big 12 championship game.
And they have a top 25 offense and defense.
Yeah, very balanced.
Yeah.
Right?
Or pass game, run game.
Yeah.
And their defense is third in defensive stops on rushing, I believe.
No, you look at them on paper, you say, yeah, Michigan should win this ball game, but it's going to be a tight ball game through and through. And having watched Michigan up close and personal against Ohio State, there were 5 plays that they made that was the outcome of the game. It was the play action passes on the big explosives in the passing game, and of course in the ground game. They stuck to the script of just pounding the football and kept going at it when it appeared that it wasn't going anywhere. Kept getting 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards, and finally it opened up, and they got a couple of breaks here and there. And I just think this game is going to come down to which team can cause the turnovers, and win that turnover battle and gain a possession here or there and get it. But I think Michigan will win this ball game.
And without Blake Corum, they're still putting up the big yardage against Ohio State, against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. Donovan Edwards is the key to the game.
Oh man, Donovan.
If TCU can corral him, which has been easier said than done, but again, he's not Blake Corum, or we would have heard of, you know what I mean?
But the play calling for Michigan has been, offensive play calling has been pretty doggone good. They've been very creative in terms of finding ways to get the ball into their playmakers' hands.
Yeah.
It hasn't been the Michigan of old where it's been very predictable, the 3 yards in cloud of dust. They've been doing things in formations and setting things up to, like, wow, okay, I didn't see that one coming, to get the ball into their playmakers' hands, to open up the game. And it forces the defense to think differently in terms of what they're doing. So I expect a couple of wrinkles for Michigan to throw at TCU's way to kind of get them off, setting off balance a little bit.
Eddie mentioned he saw Michigan up close and personal. That was at the game. He was at Michigan-Ohio State at Ohio Stadium, where big expectations ended with a lot of regret, and regret on multiple fronts. Of course, Ohio State losing to Michigan yet again. I know you came back and said, man, for another year, Ohio State's not matching the line of scrimmage play. I want to get to that in a moment.
Yep.
But also regrets about this bet that you made with Taylor Lewan, where you had to pay off the bet, and it took a couple of weeks. But here's Eddie George, Heisman winner from Ohio State, paying off his bet with Titans left tackle Taylor Lewan, Michigan standout, up front in the trenches.
Hey Taylor, what's up? Eddie George here. Hey, I'm a man of my word. A bet is a bet. Sorry it's taking me a little time to do this, but it's tough. It's been painful to get over that loss, the way we lost. But I at least wanted to get this out there before the bowl games began and so forth. Hopefully this brings a little joy and a smile to your face, considering all we're going through with the Titans, what you're personally going through. May this be a gift to you. But this is very painful. It's painful for me to put on this little tight-ass jersey, which does not fit, as you can see, so I had to struggle getting in that, so that was painful. It's painful for me to wear these colors and this disgusting uniform and to sing this disgusting song. So here we go. Let's get this over with, man, so you can go about your day. Here we go. Valiant hail to the conquering heroes. Hail to Michigan.
If you know Eddie, it is extremely painful for him to do this. He won't even say the name Michigan.
Yeah.
And you're singing the fight song for Taylor Lewan.
You know what? I opened my big mouth. I saw Taylor at the game. I think it was his first time at the game without being a player. And, you know, I felt very confident in our ability.
I would have too.
Yeah, right? So I said, hey, you know, we got to do a bet. And he's on the sideline. I said, well, what is it? I said, well, you know, let's do something that'll be painful for both of us. You sing my fight song in my jersey and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I had the jersey and everything ready for it, packed up to go. And then he said, well, shoot me your address. And shot him the address. And his jersey comes in, and I'm like, ooh.
Forgot about this.
I said, okay. I got to.
You're like, the Lewans want to send me a Christmas card. That's very nice.
Yeah, and, you know, it took me a while. It took me about 3 weeks to you know, to decompress, to get out my system. But I said, I've got to get this done because I'm a man of my word and get it done. And the Buckeye faithful were upset with me. But, hey, you know what?
Hey, win the game.
Win the game. But all in all, you know, it was fun to banter back and forth that way, but that damn jersey was so tight, man. I mean,
you look like a defensive tackle.
God, yeah. You see my lats in that damn thing? The 7 was stretching. It was just spreading out like I'm not that damn big. So of course he sends a jersey that's way too small, so he knows I can't squeeze into it. So he
was hoping it would rip. Right?
Exactly. So I got this next one. So I'm praying that it comes down to that matchup between that team up north and Ohio State.
Yeah.
And it works out in our favor. I'm sending him a size medium, and he's going to have to squeeze into that thing.
I'm rooting for that now.
I am too.
Although Taylor looks like a size medium all of a sudden.
Right. He's playing.
He's trim now.
He
Props
looks good.
to you, Taylor.
Looks good.
How confident are you in the matchup against Georgia?
I'll say, you know, on any given Saturday you can win the ball game. Ohio State, listen, their receiving core is probably the best in the country. That room is really talented. And I think athlete to athlete, they match up with Georgia extremely well, defensively and offensively speaking. You go back and look at the LSU game that they played in the SEC championship game that gave up, over 500 yards of offense to LSU.
500
passing yards. And when C.J. Stroud, you know, picked to be probably the #1 pick in the NFL draft, was a Heisman finalist, He can throw the ball all over the yard. He can spin it. He can get it to the frisbee catching dogs. So he's got some receivers down there. So that is the one place where I think Ohio State has an edge. Now the question is, can they win the line of scrimmage? Can they be balanced? Can they run the ball when they need to run the football? Will C.J. Stroud use his legs when he has to? And that's going to be the difference offensively speaking. And can Ohio State's defense withstand the body blows of that potent Georgia run offense? That's going to be another factor. And I don't know if, in a matter of 3 weeks, if you can solve that. Either you're built for that and you have the mindset for that, or you don't. So that's going to be a major factor. If it's a shootout, I can lean toward Ohio State to win that. But
and the game in the trenches has been a trend for them for 2 years now.
Yeah.
This is not just, you saw it against Michigan. You were pointing this out last year, but this past season you're pointing out against Northwestern, for instance.
Yes. Northwestern was a telltale sign for me. When you had to run the football, when the wind is blowing in your face at 10,000 miles an hour.
You need a yard.
You need a yard, 3rd and 1. You're Ohio State. You are Ohio State. You get that yard. You impose your will. Matter of fact, you tell them, hey, we're running isolation behind me on 1, and we're going to get this yard. And that wasn't there. So, to me, that's championship football. That's a championship mindset. And that's just, exerting dominance over your opponent. So that's going to be the biggest factor for Ohio State is can they win inside the trenches.
I think this is going to be a great game.
We do.
The last time we saw Ohio State truly test, I know they had to play from behind and come back against Missouri. But, Eddie, the SEC championship game, not this year, last year against Bama, where they lost. That, to me, is Ohio State in a nutshell. They can match you athlete for the most part. I know you're going to get to the trenches thing, and you'll point that out to me. But you've got the quarterback who's a Heisman hopeful at the time. Of course, Bryce Young went on to win it. But they took down that one of the best, if not the best, defense we've ever seen in college football. Put up tons of yards and points on them. I'm not thinking it's a blowout in that regard for Ohio State, but I do think there are similarities to how they go about with their offensive attack against a really good but not as great defense as we saw at Georgia a year ago. The question is, based on the opt-outs, how much does that all factor into what Ohio State – Smith and Jigba not playing in this game. How much does that factor into –
He hasn't played, pretty much all season, it seemed like.
Yeah, and the talk has been like he's not healthy enough to play. I know that's been discussed and disputed, but I mean, not having him on one side of this offense against a Georgia defense is it's a big factor.
Certainly is a big factor, and with him in the ball game, it's a different dynamic you have to be concerned about. Certainly, when you got Harrison and Jigba out there together, it's a problem. But I think there's still enough talent within that receiving core that can still present problems for that Georgia defensive backfield. Again, for me, it's going to be the run game. Are they healthy enough running back wise to churn out those hard yards and to get things done up front? So that to provide that balance is going to be key for Ohio State.
And man, I really hope there's a rematch.
I do too.
I really hope there's a rematch because then, I mean, on one side, Eddie gets his revenge, right? On the other side, on the other side, watch out.
Here's the thing: we didn't bet, like we didn't have the.
No, I'm just saying as an Ohio State, faithful.
Yes.
The great.
Yeah.
You're one of the greats.
Yeah.
You're looking at a possible. For the first time ever, they would meet outside of the regular season.
Right.
And you're looking at possible 0-2 against the Wolverines. That's not good for Ryan Day. I like Ryan Day, but man, the vitriol for that dude after that loss, you want to see, you talk about an off-season of heat. He's going to face that if that's the case. I like the storyline. I root for the storylines. And this Ohio State-Michigan for the title would be an amazing storyline.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. And I think Buckeye Nation is salivating for that opportunity. Trust me.
You're going to take me to the championship game? Let's go. If that's the case,
let's do it. Why not?
Coming up, by the way, it's in L.A.
Oh, that's right, Liz.
It's SoFi.
Yeah, SoFi. Great venue.
Coming up, we'll switch gears. We'll talk NFL headlines and look ahead a bit to the playoff picture. John McClain joins us from GallerySports.com. With Eddie George, I'm Jonathan Hutton on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined today by SEC Mike. You guys know who he is. Michael Bratton joins us on the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Trey. It's always a treat having you on my show, that SEC podcast. So, hey, it's an honor to do your show.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and it's the holiday season. We've got bowl games going on. We got the transfer portal going on, signing day stuff going on. It's chaotic. It's never a day off in college football, as you know. So let's start in the transfer portal, Michael, where we have seen, I think I saw a number that there were around 1,500 players in the transfer portal as we are having this conversation right now. And I would love to know your thoughts on how you think this has played out since the first day it opened, and then realizing we have got until January 19th, if I'm not mistaken, until this thing closes. What's your early thoughts on how this has played out?
Well, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, to be honest with you, Trey. I keep track of all the players from the SEC that have jumped into the portal, and A&M's got over 20. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, they're close to those figures as well, just below A&M. But, man, it's absolutely chaotic. And I don't know if it's a good for the sport. I don't know if it's bad for the sport. But I certainly think that teams like LSU and Ole Miss, I think they've kind of laid a blueprint. If you want to turn over your roster in a single offseason, it can be done. And I bet you Billy Napier, of course, they're kind of doing it now, but I bet Billy Napier kind of wishes he would have taken that tactic as well.
It's awesome having number 27, the Renaissance man, Eddie George, in studio as our guest host today on OutKick 360. Chad Withrow back with us next week. He's enjoying, or I don't know, I'm assuming he's enjoying Nebraska. It took him 13 hours to drive there and hopefully not that many hours to dig his way out whenever he's ready to come back to Nashville. John McClain joins us each and every Tuesday at this time from GallerySports.com. We talk NFL headlines and look ahead to the upcoming matchups a bit, and we'll look ahead to the playoff scenarios as well. John, welcome in. Hope you're doing well.
I am. It's an honor to be on with such an esteemed actor as Eddie George, who I miss seeing on TV shows like NCIS LA, where he got in one of the best fights I've ever seen on TV with LL Cool J, but he let a rapper beat him up.
It was all in the script, John. It was all in the script.
Who's been on the screen more, you or John McClain? John, how many movies have you been in?
I've been in 8, but Eddie had more airtime in one episode of NCIS LA than I had in all of my 8 movies.
Well, I think you deserve an Oscar for all of your work, John. How about that?
Yeah, as I told people, Eddie, that'd be for supporting actor.
But he does have a vote for the Screen Actors Guild.
I do.
And so does John, just based on that small.
I do too. Yeah,
we're talking. So you get all the movies ahead of time, right?
Yes, we do.
See,
yes, we do.
I'm extremely jealous of that. Withrow even more so. John, J.J. Watt. Let's start with it. What an unbelievable career in a 4-year span that would be Hall of Fame worthy in and of itself there in Houston. But learning that he's stepping away, he's retiring officially after 12 seasons. You covered him for the majority of his career there in Houston. What will you remember him for, and what did you think of when you learned that he's officially calling it quits?
I thought that he was going to play a couple more years. He's 33. He's having the best season he's had in quite a while. 9.5 sacks, got a bunch of tackles for loss. He has always played the run well. And I was looking up, everybody talks about the 4-year span in which he had, 69 sacks and was NFL Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, tying Lawrence Taylor for the most in history. Aaron Donald has since tied them. But I looked up his best 6 years as a pass rusher. In those best 6 years, he averaged 16 sacks. That's over a 6-year period. Nobody's ever done that. He averaged 19 over a 4-year period. He had over 20 2 times in 3 years, scored 3 touchdowns one season when he pulled a Mike Vrabel and they put him in at tight end, and he was always left open, just like the idiots that played against Vrabel. I used to think, if Vrabel is in on offense, don't you think there's a pretty good chance he's going to get the ball? And yet every time Vrabel caught a touchdown pass. Must have been his great route running. And JJ did that. And I think about that, but I also think even more, I have never seen a player, and I've been covering the NFL for over 45 years, and I've been following it since I was a kid in 1960, who did more in the community than Eddie did. I'm writing a column for GallerySports.com in which I'm not going to talk about his stats. Anybody can look that up. I'm going to tell about 5 or 6 stories that I think people don't know, all involve him and charitable things, or him and things he did for people. And some of them weren't just to help people like he did when Hurricane Harvey destroyed a big part of Houston. And he did one night. We had gone from New Orleans to Frisco, suburb of Dallas, where the Cowboys trained, and the Texans were going to practice there at their facility for about 4 days till the coast was clear to come back down I-45. And the first night there, JJ's in his room, and he does a little video, and the video says, to help the people from Hurricane Harvey, I'm going to donate $100,000, and I'm hoping that you will help me equal $100,000. And I believe ultimately that turned into about $38 million, and he won the Walter Payton NFL Defensive Man of the Year award. But the story that blows me away the most about Eddie, about JJ, I got Eddie stories too, is one time the people used to call me or email me and say, J.J. Watt came to our firehouse unannounced and gave us this, and did this. And I would call him and say, do you mind if I use it? He said, would you please not? It looks like I told you. And then sometimes people went public. They put it on social media and he didn't have any choice. But there was a year in which a little girl was crying one time and her mother asked her why she was crying. I think she's like 7 or 8 years old. Family's big Texans fans. And the little girl was crying because she just realized she wasn't going to be able to marry J.J. Watt. And mom thought it was cute and she filmed it and asked her again why you're crying. And she had, like little kids do, big old face. She thought her world was over. And they put it on social media. Somebody brought it up to JJ. So then one day, this family poured into a van. They went to NRG Stadium. They told them they were going up to the ticket booth to order tickets to a concert. And they walk up to the front where you can walk into the entrance next to the team store, the ticket booth. And there was JJ with a jersey, with a make-believe wedding with this little girl, in which he got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. And one of the PR guys is holding up a laptop and called up, "Here comes the bride." And he picked her up and he danced around the lobby, and while her parents cried, and parents, of course, put it on social media. But that's when I think about JJ, I think about stories like that.
John, man, that's an incredible story. You know, he seems like a wonderful human being. You know, when I think about the greatest players to play the game in the NFL in terms of defense, you know, I think of Dick Butkus, Reggie White, Deion Sanders, Lawrence Taylor. Where would you rank J.J. Watt among the great defensive players that played the game?
First of all, Eddie, you would have loved to have played with him. You would have loved to have had him as a teammate. You know, he went to Arizona the last 2 seasons, and I've been watching the in-season Hard Knocks because I wanted to see him and DeAndre Hopkins. And it's amazing how many things they put on there behind the scenes showing Watt, not talking to just offensive linemen and defensive linemen, giving them tips, helping them out. But a wide receiver had a tough day where he dropped some passes. He's down on one knee, had his head down. JJ went over there and said, "You know how many times I've been knocked on my ass?" And the guy goes, "No." And he started telling him all the time it happened. And it was going to happen to him. So it was kind of a moral of the story. The guy got up, made 2 or 3 big catches, came over and thanked him. Little things like that. And when I think of Watt, he really burst on the scene at the end of his rookie year, playoff game against Cincinnati. He leaped up, Andy Dalton threw a pass, he grabbed it, and he took off down the left side and scored a touchdown. And I tell people that's when the J.J. Watt phenomenon was born. In his first playoff game, Gary Kubiak won, first division title, and he scored a touchdown. And of course, he became such a fan favorite because he was always in the community. One time I asked him, "Why do you do so much stuff in the community?" He said, "Well, I'm single. I got nothing else to do." He said, "When I get married, I'll sit around on the sofa and watch SportsCenter. But now I want to get out in the community and do things for people." And he was great against the run, got double teamed all the time. We'd see him in the locker room, and he has so many bruises on him where people would hit him high, hit him low. He never complained about it, but he was great against the run. He scored touchdowns, and he was a great pass rusher. And Wade Phillips was his first coach here. And Wade coached guys like Reggie White, Bruce Smith, Von Miller, Ricky Jackson, some of the greatest, Aaron Donald, some of the greatest defensive players in history. And he wouldn't say which one was the best because he wouldn't want them to get mad, but he put JJ right up there in the middle of them with Reggie White and Bruce Smith and Aaron Donald. And I think that's about the ultimate compliment you can get from somebody who coached you.
John, from a massive success story to an unmitigated disaster in Denver with Nathaniel Hackett getting the boot with 2 games left in the regular season, his first as a head coach. Eddie and I discussed it earlier. It's not his fault that the Denver Broncos hired him, you know, but man, if you could write a script that could describe how bad a season could go for a first-year head coach known for offense, paired with a quarterback in one of the biggest trades we've ever seen in the league, and for it to go this bad, the percentage is extremely low. But Hackett made it look easy.
And one of the things George Payton, the GM, who the new owner says he's going to rely on, and I don't know why, because George Payton hired him, and they hired him because he came from Green Bay. And at the time, there was talk that Aaron Rodgers may force a trade, and people think they hired Hackett because they thought it would help them get Rodgers. And Hackett's dad, Paul Hackett, is a former head coach, offensive coordinator. People thought, well, he grew up in a football family. He's got to be smart. He never called a play in Green Bay. And he was dumb enough not to keep Mike Munchak, one of the best line coaches in history, as you guys know. He brought a friend with him, and I think that friend got fired yesterday as well, while Munchak is a free agent. And when you can tell right away that a coach is over his head, overwhelmed because of clock management and game day decisions, and he has to bring in a guy to help him then, not in the offseason, that should be a red flag. And I'll guarantee you, when teams are hiring coaches in the offseason, they're going to do a lot better homework than George Payton and the Broncos did. And then Payton made that awful trade for Russell Wilson and gave him that contract. And the new owners are saying they're going to stick with George Payton. Give me a break.
John, what playoff scenario intrigues you the most as we go into the final 2 weeks of the season?
Cincinnati is second hottest team in football, 7-game winning streak. San Francisco's won 8 in a row. The Bengals they had the toughest closing schedule. They're just coming off a victory over New England, in which Patriots had to turn it over right at the end for the Bengals to win. Now they got Buffalo and Baltimore. They get them both in Cincinnati. And if they beat Buffalo and Kansas City doesn't lose, Kansas City's going to get home field advantage. And the Bengals beat Kansas City. Looking down the line, what interests me the most, if the Bengals play the Chiefs in the playoffs, that'll be 4 games in a year. They played in the regular season last year. Chiefs beat them. Played in the playoffs. Chiefs beat them. Bengals beat them. Played in regular season this season. Bengals beat them. What are the odds that Cincinnati is going to beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes 4 times in a year? That's why I can't pick Cincinnati to go to the Super Bowl. And then, like you guys, I can't wait to see what happens in that last game in Jacksonville. Texans play Jacksonville. Texans may fool around and win another game and screw up the number 1 pick. We don't want them to. We want them to get the first overall pick. And, it's Doug Peterson is going to want to keep the momentum going. Some people are saying, well, he should rest Trevor Lawrence against the Texans. You don't do that when you've won 5 of 7 and your quarterback has 14 touchdowns and 1 interception. And I really wish that Ryan Tannehill were healthy with all the other injuries. And Tannehill was healthy because it's obvious Malik Willis not ready to be a passer in the NFL as a rookie. And it's just kind of like the Titans, because of those injuries, are going into games not with just 1 hand tied behind their back, but 2. If the Texans can limit Derrick Henry to 3.5 yards on all but 1 carry, that shows you how little help they have on that offense. And I feel bad for Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, I think we had discussed this in weeks past, but he was entering a stretch that was the toughest of his head coaching tenure. He's right in the middle of it, and he's trying to keep everything on the rails, but it looks like it's gone off. Al Michaels, who has been very critical of the Thursday Night Football schedule all year, gets to come to Nashville, and he gets to call a game between the Cowboys and the Titans, and a game that means absolutely nothing for the Titans' playoff chances. This could get weird. Like, does Vrabel decide not to play certain players in order to ensure the health, or what he has left of a healthy roster, for the final game against Jacksonville, or does he try to go for a victory knowing that it can help out the morale of a locker room?
I think you go for the victory. It'd be tempting to put Derrick Henry down. Eddie, I know when you played, you would not have wanted to do that. You would have fought it.
No question.
What do you think Vrabel will do with Derrick Henry, knowing what he's going to face from the Cowboys and the Jaguars, the beating he'll take? Would you sit him against the Cowboys to give him an extra week's rest for the last game against Jacksonville?
No, I wouldn't, because you need Derrick to win this ball game. You're playing against the Cowboys on Thursday night. You want to build some momentum. You want to build some morale. You want to build the confidence back in your offense. And who are you going to lean on? You know, who are you going to rely on at that point in time? You just said Malik is not ready to be a passer in this league. They're going to have to change up some things offensively from a philosophical standpoint to find ways to move the ball. And Derrick Henry is your greatest asset offensively speaking. So I'm pretty sure Derrick is not going to go for that. Listen, every game is a playoff game at this point in time. Now, this means nothing in terms of the playoff implications, but it means something in terms of momentum moving forward. Because right now, this team, if they get into the playoffs, it looks like a one-and-done football team at this point.
Yeah, and it may not even matter, John. It may not even matter if they win or not against Dallas, because that's how good Jacksonville's been playing.
I hope the fans up there understand all this, because I've had people ask me, you think Mike Vrabel's going to get fired? And I said, no, but if he did, if he got fired in the morning, he would have a job by noon. If he got fired afternoon, he'd have a job by sundown. But Amy Adams Strunk is not firing Mike Vrabel because she knows what Mike's up against, and she knows he's a great coach.
Yes, absolutely. We know what news dumps look like, and if you don't, just look at Friday, 2 days before Christmas, the Friday before Christmas, late afternoon, we get word through the league confirming that Miles Austin, assistant coach for the Jets, had been suspended for gambling. Turns out, John, he was gambling on basketball. Doesn't matter. That's the policy across the league. And now we learned that he's suspended for a year. Of course, Calvin Ridley, Falcons wide receiver, then traded to Jacksonville. He's eligible to be reinstated by February, I believe. But nonetheless, we know he was going to miss the season. He actually bet on games within the league. What do you make of the policy, and what do you make of the league now profiting off of these apps and these sites, but yet you can't, if you're a contract or a paid employee of the league, gamble on literally anything?
Calvin Ridley was too stupid. He used his own name. If you want to gamble, you don't need to use your name. I think it's preposterous. We see 24/7 NFL telling people to bet. And I understand it's the rules, but the rules ought to change, because the NFL, the owners are lining their pockets with what could be $100 billion around the world within 5 years. That's why they play around the world, because of gambling. They're going to go back to Germany. They love the Germans to gamble, just like the Brits. They've been gambling on sports a lot longer than we have. And so I think it's ridiculous to suspend a coach and a player like that for doing what the NFL is telling everybody to do.
Think about how many players and coaches and staff members have gambled on anything
Of
but
course.
football. And
They gamble on football. Give me a break.
Well, of course they do. But like in this case, all we know is that Austin was betting on basketball. And I mean, just the idea that you're suspended for a year for that is just mind-boggling to me. But Deshaun Watson gets 13 weeks.
Oh, now that's a great point. That is a great point.
Makes no sense. And, you know, it's a news dump because they don't want that to be the headline, but they're trying to send a message to help the integrity of the game. I get it. I would, if I'm the league, I don't want players or personnel or anybody betting on games, because then you're putting certain situations like this week in a meaningless Thursday night football game at stake. I get it. But who cares if they're betting on the NBA? It makes zero sense to me.
I mean,
You should never be able to bet on your team, ever.
True. It opens up a debate about Pete Rose. Then now we're going down the rabbit hole we don't need to go down. But yeah.
John, thank you as always. Appreciate you. Happy New Year to you, and can't wait to catch up next week. We're going to have everything in clear view for week 18 now. Excuse me.
Happy New Year to you guys. Eddie, it's great seeing you as always. I look forward to seeing you on the big screen and the small screen and on my cell phone soon. You're too good to be sidelined. Maybe you need a new agent like me.
Yeah, hey, hey, more than happy to be my agent, brother. Anytime, John. Good seeing you, brother. Love you, man.
Great. Thank you, guys.
There's John McClain. You can follow him on Twitter, social at McClain_on_NFL, and also check him out at gallerysports.com. He mentioned the NCIS LA filming that you did. This was 5, maybe 6 years ago now with you and LL Cool J.
Yes.
And the fight that you guys got into after rehearsing for a scene.
Yes.
And it caught Eddie off guard. We'll get the details of this. The time he fought LL Cool J. That's next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, oh, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around, and everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
Eddie George co-hosting today. Glad you're with us. Coming up in about 35 minutes, we'll have Mookie Betts with us, joining the show via Zoom. Looking forward to that conversation. Eddie, I met him for the first time with you. We were grabbing cigars somewhere downtown. I can't remember where, but it was you, Mookie, and Ray Lewis.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Withrow and I showed up acting like we were supposed to be there. And we looked way out of place. Because we showed up at Sports Coach. You guys are like just hanging out like today. And we showed that we didn't deserve to be in your presence.
I do remember that. It was a good night.
That was a blast.
Yeah, it was.
I love this story. This is one of my favorite stories with Eddie because I call him the Renaissance man. He is. He can do everything. Broadway to what we're about to get into. Of course, 10,000-yard plus rusher and Heisman Trophy winner, head coach, philanthropist, much more. Father.
Author. DJ.
Author, DJ, yes, thank you. But your acting performance with LL Cool J took a turn. Set us up for the scene. We've got a still photo of this where you were in NCIS LA. Yeah. This was roughly 2017, if we had to guess.
Somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact year, but this is, LL and I go way back to my rookie year. I did an episode on In the House. We did a sitcom.
Okay.
Back in the day, and I grew up an LL fan. We stayed in touch throughout the years, and when I stopped playing football, got into acting, and got on NCIS. I played in 2 episodes. So,
it was 2.
There's 2 episodes. So the first one, there was no fight scene. Simply I think it was that one here where we're on the same we're on the same team. We kind of.
What was your role?
My role was we knew each other from our military days.
Okay.
So I forgot my character's name. We'll just say Leon for now.
Okay.
So
all right.
Leon is the old buddies and they go back. So this particular episode, my character kind of gets in trouble with like some gambling debts, and I got hooked up with some really bad people, and they're holding hostage my daughter, and I have to carry out this assassination, and L kind of picks up on it. So there was a scene where he sees me and he chases me down. We get into this fight, and I run off and go do what I have to do. So in the rehearsal, we rehearse, we go through all the moves. I have to win.
Right. You got to run off and do what you have to do.
So I get the best of them.
Now, how long rehearse? Like a night before type deal?
This is a couple of hours before.
Okay.
So we go through the blocking, we go through the moves. Everything is choreographed, and it runs smoothly. But then there's like a break in between the rehearsal and the actual fight. So we come back, and then I come back to it, and I'm thinking we're going to run through the same thing, but it's completely changed. Like now, all of a sudden, I'm getting slapped in the ribs. And I'm getting tossed over, and I get an arm hold that,
I was getting like an arm bar?
An arm bar, right. And we're running this scene multiple times, and each and every time we're doing it, it's like arm wrestling. It was literally like, who's the strongest in the room?
Yeah.
Like it was like that. And
you got me on the first take. I got you now.
But during the actual fight, though, it got a little like competitive. Like he would slap me in my ribs, and I'm like, okay, all right, here we go. So I slap him in his ribs, and every move was just a little jolt here and there, like the nose.
Yes.
Like, okay, who's the stronger guy? And you see, Al was a pretty buff dude. I mean, he was just pressing up 125-pound dumbbells the other day. So, afterwards, I just remember it was about an hour of this. And I go back to my room, and I just say, oh, my God, it felt like I played in a game, like I got hit by the Ravens. Like I played against the Ravens, like their defense. I'm sore. I set up an ice bath and a hot tub. I get a massage, and I mean, you could see the bruise marks on my ribs. My
like a UFC
arm
fighter,
is swollen, and he has he invites us over to his house for the fight. I think it was Roy Jones. No, it wasn't Roy. It was who was the big fight back then? It was a big fight on the
Pacquiao Mayweather, maybe, or
something along those lines. I can't remember who it was. And then I get over there and I'm like kind of walking slow, and he says, "Yo, B, yo, I got to tell you, man, hey, you a strong MFer. You know what I'm saying?" He's like, "Man, I am so sore after yesterday." I said, "Man, I'm sore too." I'm like, "What were you thinking?" He's like, "Man, you know, I got competitive." And then, so we had a good laugh about it. And but man, I tell you what, he's a strong dude, man. It was
strong style.
Yes, yeah.
I bet it was Mayweather McGregor at this time period.
It had to have been Mayweather McGregor. No, who was it? Now it's going to bother me.
Well, it sounds like you had the best fight.
Yeah, it was.
Do you know which take they actually put in the episode?
They spliced it up. They spliced everything up. I had to flip them over my back. I mean, I wish we could show it right now.
I do too.
It would have been great.
I would love that.
It was real, really real.
I've never actually seen it.
Oh, really?
The actual episode. No, and I had no idea you were in 2 episodes.
I'll find out which one it was. How about that? I think I can find out, and then we'll post it. We'll show
send it to us.
Yeah.
Some fights in the NFL for playoff position. We've got a glance at the NFL playoff picture for the AFC and NFC when we come back. And Eddie's going to give us his top 5 running backs in the league right now. And then we'll run through his top 5 all-time. And yes, the all-time list took way longer for him to decide on, especially for number 5. Details there, plus Mookie Betts in hour number 3. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Withrow in Nebraska, so the legend, Eddie George, in studio with us today as the co-host. Glad you're with us in a show that's flying by. Final hour is here. 20 minutes from now, Mookie Betts will join us, former AL MVP for the Boston Red Sox. Now he's on a MVP roster, man for man, hitter for hitter, out in L.A. with the Dodgers. Mookie will join us coming up in segment number 2, 20 minutes from right now. We're going to get Eddie's top 5 running backs, both current and all-time. That's in a matter of minutes, but take a look at the NFL playoff picture as we've been recapping Week 16 throughout today's show, and we've got the current matchups for you. Now, keep in mind, the Jets are right there on the cusp of knocking on the door to get in as we take a look at the playoff picture in the AFC, because the Dolphins, the 7 seed right now, they have back-to-back games coming up within the division, same as the Jets. They're at 8-7. Tua Tagovailoa in concussion protocol. They've lost 3 straight games now, and currently Miami would be on the road in Kansas City. The Chiefs are 12-3. Of course, the Bills are getting the first-round bye, but that can flip as well because Cincinnati hosts Buffalo on Monday Night Football this coming week. So
big game.
Massive game. The Chargers they're in. They've clinched their spot. And for all the discussion, the slow play, and they've been playing about 500 all year, Justin Herbert and company, they've done what they need to do to go ahead and clinch their playoff spot. Currently, they're the 6th seed on the road in Cincinnati. Baltimore, the 5 seed, their game has been flexed with Pittsburgh. They will play on Sunday Night Football now against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Always a great game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. A field goal game earlier this season with Baltimore winning. Not so earlier, it was just a couple of weeks ago. Currently, they're on the road in Jacksonville because Jacksonville right now, they are the AFC South leader over the Titans for the first time all season, and that is due to the fact that the Titans lost, Jacksonville won, and they had the head-to-head tiebreaker with the same record. They will play in Week 18 for the Week 18 winner. That team will go on as the AFC South champ to host a game, most likely against the Chargers or the Ravens. What stands out to you, Eddie, on that picture for the AFC currently?
Oh, wow. What stands out to me, the Bengals. I think they have the inside track really to do it all. And like you said, this game is a big game against the Buffalo Bills for a lot of reasons. One, they would have beaten Kansas City head-to-head.
And Buffalo.
Buffalo. So, and they get the first round bye, and they go into it with a great sense of confidence because everything comes through Cincinnati now based off of this one game. And this is a huge game for Buffalo because Buffalo, they were picked all year, the sexy pick all year long to win the Super Bowl. And now all of a sudden you lose that game against the Bengals and you have to go on the road and do it. It's a different deal now. Now you're not the hunted. You're not the hunter.
Yeah.
So it changes the roles there. The Jaguars scare me. The Ravens, they're beat up. They're without the quarterback.
Yeah, Lamar. You haven't bought into them even with Lamar Jackson though this year.
No. I mean, the last 2 years because their offense is limited, and I really felt that going back 2-3 years ago when they were the hot team when the Titans went in there and beat them and so forth. They have not gotten better in that regard. He has not really taken the strides of being a quarterback that can throw on schedule and so forth. And I think that window is closing for that for that team. But Jacksonville, they're playing great team football, exceptional special teams play. They're running the football well with Etienne, Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence. If there was more time, I think he could be in the conversation of winning the MVP. 14 touchdowns, 1 interception. The defense has been playing opportunistic. They're playing with a great sense of confidence. They're playing free with no pressure. And they scare me. No matter if they're on the road, at home, it does not matter. That team is really building enough confidence. So the next 2 weeks, when I don't know who they play this week, but
Jacksonville, Houston.
They play Houston. They should beat Houston, and then they host the Titans for the crown, for the AFC South crown, and we'll see how they roll into it. So That's what really stands out to me in terms of that. But the Bengals and certainly the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, are the hottest teams right now jumping into this.
Let's take a look at the NFC, where Philadelphia, they need one win to clinch everything. And meanwhile, Dallas can still win the division by winning out and Philadelphia losing out based on the head-to-head matchup that occurred this past weekend. But right now, Philadelphia at 13-2, they have the first-round bye. The Vikings are in the 2 spot, and they would be hosting the Commanders, who have been losing, but some things have fallen their way to where they're still in as the 7 seed right now. It's still remarkable, the job that Ron Rivera and company has done with all of the behind-the-scenes issues going on within the organization, and they're doing it with Taylor Heineke. Their running back in Robinson was shot prior to the season. And he's finally – it's a remarkable story. Their defense has been phenomenal. So has San Francisco's. San Francisco, the 3 seed, at 11-4, would be hosting the New York Giants. Dallas would be on the road at Tampa, but this week we get Tampa and Carolina, which is for Tampa a play-in game. Carolina, if they win out, they're in the postseason as well as the NFC South champ. What do you think about these matchups?
Oh, man, I like this matchup here. I like, the Commanders. They're playing, they're gritty. They're finding ways to win. Like you said, great storyline there, how they've been resilient and coming back, certainly with Ron Rivera and his health issues and so forth. And it's good to see that team playing with a great deal of confidence, scrappy team. And the Vikings is like, you don't know who they're 11-0 or 12-0.
11-0 and
11-0.
One possession games.
One possession games. And it's like, well, they're 12-3, but they could easily be 7-8.
I know. They were that team last year.
Right.
They were not winning those tight games. So they get credit for that. It's hard to overlook the fact that the one possession games by and large have been against below 500 teams.
Right. I'm not buying them. They're not a dominant team.
I still question them too.
The team right now, the Eagles, to me, are head and shoulders above the rest of the NFC. But that second team, the 49ers, they're the real deal. Brock Purdy, doesn't matter who's their quarterback. They're going to bludgeon you with the run game and play outstanding defense and find ways to get the ball to Kettle, their tight ends, McCaffrey, they're without Debo
Samuel's out.
Debo Samuels is out. So they're finding ways still to be dominant. Yeah, I'm buying the 49ers right now. It's the Eagles and 49ers that stick out to me in the whole thing. The Cowboys, they have the offense to do it. It just depends on Dak, and how they decide to move their offense. If they decide to run the football, they're dangerous.
They can go to the NFC Championship with that run game.
With their run game and their defensive front. Yeah. They're nasty. It just depends on, will they get in their own way? Will their ego get in their own way with wanting to throw the ball all over the yard? So we'll see, in limiting the amount of turnovers in the playoffs.
Scenarios on the back end of the first couple teams out in the NFC set up for some good drama over the final 2 weeks, because right now Seattle's the 8 seed, first team out, followed by the Lions, who lost this past weekend head-to-head to Carolina. And then there's the Green Bay Packers, currently at the 10 spot at 7-8. But there is a path for them. They need to win out. They need Washington to lose one game, or they need the Giants to lose both of their remaining games, on top of winning both of their games remaining, which is Vikings this week and then the Lions. Both of those games at Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers going in as a 7 seed. On the road against currently Minnesota, could be San Francisco. The 49ers have owned the Green Bay Packers as of late in the postseason. Plenty of drama there if that happens.
Yes.
Eddie, let's get from playoff picture to your overall look at the running back position in the NFL right now. There have been teams, more so than what I thought this year, that have had to rely on their run game because the passing offense took a while to get going.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily reflect in the stats, though, or with the big household names like we would see not even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, with some of the running backs we've seen come through the league. Right now, Eddie George, give me your top 5 running backs in the National Football League.
Okay, currently
we'll start at 5.
At number 5, I think he's a tremendous back. There's a lot of great things within the offense. It's Dalvin Cook from Minnesota. I think he's an explosive guy. He has the help of the receiver position with Jefferson on the outside, who could be a 2,000-yard receiver. So that certainly helps with him being able to hit wide open running lanes. We have a receiver that can stretch the field. Number 4, got Saquon Barkley. Coming into the year, the first game of the year was against the Titans. He showed that he was back. I mean, explosive runs, showing his speed, his power, his suddenness, his quickness inside in between the gaps and holes and so forth. That's a powerful lower half. I think Saquon is holding that position here at number 4. Number 3 is the current NFL leader in rushing. That's Josh Jacobs. And, man, he doesn't get enough love.
Contract year, too.
Contract year. Perfect timing. But, I mean, a few weeks ago had a 200-yard game. Really has become the bright spot of a really disappointing Las Vegas Raider football team.
Yes,
right?
He's been the most consistent aspect of their offense by far.
Very much so.
By far.
And number 2 is Nick Chubb. It's a steady Eddie, and at Cleveland. Nothing crazy sexy about him. He just rips off big runs, powerful between the tackles, just a freak at running back. Right?
I thought his numbers would go up as Watson came back, and they haven't.
No.
And there's a lot to be desired there. But Chubb is Cleveland has an opportunity to be a multi-dimensional offense.
Absolutely.
And we haven't seen that yet. The rust is still clearly there on Watson, but Chubb's got to be the bell cow.
He's the bell cow right now. But Watson is the key to make it go. And he's going to take him an off season to clear his name, to clear all the stuff that he's gone through with the case and just getting into a regular, normal off season where it's all just football. Because when you're carrying that much mental weight on you, I don't care who you are, weighs on you. So that's affected Nick Chubb. But number 1 is Derrick Henry.
He can still win the rushing title this year in this team
with a beat-up offensive line.
Yeah.
Beat-up offensive line. Doesn't have a number 1 receiver. Okay, basically the offense runs through him. So, he's still the number 1 running back in the league because he can still dominate the game. Everything runs through Derrick. Their only success comes from him touching the football. And you can't say that about anybody else, on this list.
He's also having a career year in the receiving game, too. They need to give him the football more, and that's crazy to say given the fact that he can, again, win the rushing title in 2022.
Amazing.
I don't disagree with that list. Would
you change anything?
Maybe Josh Jacobs ahead of Chubb, just based on consistency. I feel like Jacobs has been more consistent week in and week out. I still think Henry on that list is the back you have to game plan the most for.
Yeah.
He's the biggest threat. I think you got it right.
Yeah.
McCaffrey's worthy of discussion, but what's held me back on that is I don't look at McCaffrey as just a running back.
He's a receiver. He's a utility guy.
Yes.
He's a specialty
like
kid.
An athlete.
Athlete, and he's just a part of the puzzle. He's not the entire offense. He's a complimentary player, a damn good one, but not a focal point.
All time. This took you. By the way, pre-show, Eddie rattled off his top 5 pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think you had a debate about who should be 5 or 6, honestly. But we certainly pondered our next list. All-time running backs for Eddie George, starting at number 5, which was your biggest discussion point.
Yes. I mean, you can plug a lot of guys at number 5. A lot of guys. You can go Eric Dickerson.
Yeah.
Can you just – no. AD was just his size, his speed, world-class speed. I mean, he was a threat to take it to the house at any point in time. Big running back. Love watching him run. It's like watching poetry in motion or silk float through wind. I mean, he was just awesome to watch. Gale Sayers, short career, but exciting to watch. You can put him at number 5. Regardless of what you think about this next person. O.J. Simpson,
No doubt.
Was a bad man running the rock. Buffalo Bills did rush for 2,000 yards in the snow, in the elements.
He's going to tweet you now.
Of course. You can throw in Curtis Martin or Jerome Bettis, Tony Dorsett. You can throw in Marcus Allen.
Yes. That's what I'm thinking of.
Marcus Allen, I mean, golly, consistent. How he handled the Raider Oakland Bo Jackson dilemma with grace and class. Goes to Kansas City and does his thing there. Marcus Allen, who, by the way, is a good golfing buddy of mine. But in this case, a man that intimidated plenty of defensive players. EC, Earl Campbell, Tyler Rose, the Brahma Bull at number 5.
I mean, the highlights alone, in terms of intimidation, I don't know if there's a guy on this list that there's a guy that could score at will easier.
Yeah.
But in terms of just flat out run you over in the hole,
impose his will.
This
it
guy
was looking for contact.
Yeah.
Who will hunt you like a tiger in the jungle for his prey? Yes, Earl Campbell was a man of. I loved watching Earl run the ball. Oh my gosh, man!
Me too.
He punished defenders. So Earl Campbell, number 5.
And now, by the way, the most intimidating moment for me with Earl Campbell was at a dinner setting with you, where it took him a while to warm up for an off-the-record conversation we were having, and he pulls out his dip.
Yes.
And he packs it, and then he just bites halfway into it, and then packs his lip with whatever he bit off. It wasn't, you weren't digging into it. He was just biting. I was like, oh my God. I was hoping he didn't ask me to, get a chew.
Right. And then
there was nothing left.
And then after that moment, the story started flowing.
Oh, amazing stories
right?
about some of the backs that are ahead of him right here on your top 5.
Number 4. Now this is this list, you can put him however you want him.
Okay.
Right. But Emmitt Smith. I mean, he's the all-time leading rusher in NFL history by damn near a mile. He's almost to Mars right now with all the yards that
he's
he
still
has.
running.
The amount of carries leads the NFL in the carries over his career, touchdowns. I mean, Emmitt is just – you can put Emmitt in any offense, and he'll still be Emmitt Smith. He'll still be a Hall of Famer. But the line that he had in front of him, certainly with a Hall of Fame quarterback, a Hall of Fame wide receiver, a Hall of Fame tight end, Moose, you could say he's a Hall of Fame fullback. I mean, he had some dudes around him that, he could just skip and jump and do backflips through holes. And with his athleticism, his vision, his toughness, that's why he's at number 4 right now, because of the help, the supporting cast that was around him.
I think hands down, number 3 on your list is in everyone's top 5.
No question. Walter Payton, Sweetness. You can put him 1, 2, or 3. My personal favorite, Sweetness. He was class. His work ethic speaks volumes outside of his game. Maybe he's legendary for the hill runs in Mississippi. Jackson State alum. One of the few HBCU players to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. He ran, it was a term that it was associated with Walter Payton, is that you wanted to hit the defender before he hits you. You wanted to deliver the blow. And that's where I learned that from, was to not to be a hitting dummy, but to explode into the defender.
Oh, he didn't like wearing socks because he wanted to feel the ground.
Oh, yes.
Which is just, I mean, in those days, the cleats were not the cleats we're used to now.
Right. He's a gifted athlete.
Yeah,
so many
man.
stories about Walter Payton.
Number 2.
Number 2, Barry Sanders. I mean, the greatest home run hitter in the NFL, period. A threat from anywhere on the football field. Didn't have a great offensive line.
No. Organization.
Decided to leave on his own terms. Could have played clearly another 3 or 4 years in his prime. Decided not to, walked away from the game on his own terms. I mean, even in college, his numbers in college, I'm talking about NFL, in college, his numbers in a 12-game schedule, I think he rushed for 2,300, 2,200 yards. And you can't even get that on a video game nowadays. I mean, that's how ridiculous this man is.
And then at number 1 is the greatest football player of all time, not even running back.
Number 32, Jim Brown, Superman. My father loved watching him run the rock. He talked about him like, oh, ran and raved. Oh, Eddie, Jim Brown was the greatest running back I ever seen. He carried a mail. He said, in the rain, sleet, or snow, the mail will be delivered. Yes, Jim Brown, number 1.
I love your top 5. And I wish we could have filmed you trying to decide your
Did I tell you that I bought
6th.
Jim Brown a suit? Did I tell you that story?
I don't think you did.
Oh, my God.
Let's save it for the final segment
save it for the
today.
segment, yeah. It's
The
great,
time
great
Eddie
story.
bought Jim Brown a suit. You may have told it that night with Earl. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Because Earl was on a roll. When we come back, Mookie Betts is about to join us. Former AL MVP, the leading, he scored the most runs. He's tied for the most runs scored in Major League Baseball this past season, and he's on an all-star lineup every year for the all-star game, but also out in L.A. Mookie joins us next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined today by SEC Mike. You guys know who he is. Michael Bratton joins us on the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Trey. It's always a treat having you on my show, that SEC podcast. So, hey, it's an honor to do your show.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and it's the holiday season. We've got bowl games going on. We got the transfer portal going on, signing day stuff going on. It's chaotic. It's never a day off in college football, as you know. So let's start in the transfer portal, Michael, where we have seen, I think I saw a number that there were around 1,500 players in the transfer portal as we are having this conversation right now. And I would love to know your thoughts on how you think this has played out since the first day it opened, and then realizing we have got until January 19th, if I'm not mistaken, until this thing closes. What's your early thoughts on how this has played out?
Well, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, to be honest with you, Trey. I keep track of all the players from the SEC that have jumped into the portal, and A&M's got over 20. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, they're close to those figures as well, just below A&M. But, man, it's absolutely chaotic. And I don't know if it's a good for the sport. I don't know if it's bad for the sport. But I certainly think that teams like LSU and Ole Miss, I think they've kind of laid a blueprint. If you want to turn over your roster in a single offseason, it can be done. And I bet you Billy Napier, of course, they're kind of doing it now, but I bet Billy Napier kind of wishes he would have taken that tactic as well.
From 6th and Peabody in downtown Nashville and across the OutKick Network, glad you're with us with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Eddie George with us as well as today's co-host. I'm Jonathan Hutton, and Eddie, we're pleased to be joined by a guy who's just more than a right fielder for the LA Dodgers.
Oh, without question. Now, you talk about me being a Renaissance man and all this, but this dude here is a Renaissance man, but he is exceptionally good at everything he does. Okay, we know he plays baseball, right? But basketball player. I mean, he can light it up from anywhere on the court. All right, witness that. Played football, exceptional route runner, gifted athlete, awesome golfer. Okay, I've never seen anything like it. I played with him a couple times at Richland.
Nice.
And he scored, I think, 73 or something like that. First time playing there. And I'm like, okay, this is embarrassing. My own course, and he's, destroying me. A DJ can spin the records.
Like you.
But a bowler as well. I think he has, I don't know, he can tell you himself, like maybe 5 or 6 perfect games in bowling. So this dude is like from another planet, and I'm glad to call him my friend, Mookie Betts. Mook, what's up, bro?
Man, thank you. That was one of the best intros I've ever gotten, man. Thank you for that. That's my boy.
So of all the sports that I listed off, man, which one do you think is you're better at? I know you get paid to be a baseball player, but if you had to pick one.
Oh man. I would say I feel like I'm a better bowler than anything else.
How did you get into bowling?
Huh? What'd you say?
How'd you get into bowling?
Bowling was the first thing I started doing, actually. I was bowling before I was playing baseball. So that's something that is in the family. I love doing it. But baseball was definitely I think that was best. Baseball was the second thing I started doing. So it was a close second.
How many bowling balls do you own?
Oof. I would say probably a good 50.
Oh my God.
50 or so balls. Yeah, I got a little drill press. Eddie knows how serious it is.
Oh, it's serious.
Eddie knows how serious it is.
Yeah, we had a bowling event about 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And Jerome Bettis actually is a good bowler as well too. He's laughing. I didn't have a chance to see what happened. Did you guys ever really bowl off or have a chance to get anything going?
No.
I completely missed that.
No, I think I disrespected him too much. I walked up and said, "What's up, Jerome?" And I just instantly started talking trash about bowling and golf and pretty much any game. I just was talking trash. I tried to give him no hope, and so we didn't get to bowl off.
Mookie, what was it like growing up here?
But one day we will.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My bad. I just said one day we will.
Oh, yes. That'll be the next charity event right
Absolutely.
there. What was it like growing up watching Eddie George run the football?
It was amazing, man. When you watch it, all that he was able to do, and then you see him in real life, it's like, how is this big human being able to move the way he's moving, able to just do everything? I mean, he's big as all the linemen are, and he was just one of the fastest people on the field and just moved, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing.
Does it make you feel old, Eddie?
It does. It does.
I also grew up watching you here in Minute
Yes. It does make me feel old, But I am old. I'll be hitting the big 5-0 this year. So, yeah.
Shout out to 5-0.
Yes.
Big party.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to do one in Las Vegas. Catch a couple shows out there, walk the strip. Play a little golf, do some bowling, some stuff like that. Just fun family things.
Oh,
yeah.
Mookie, what's the best party you've been to since you moved to LA?
Can you say it one more time? You cut out.
Yeah, what's the best party you've attended since you moved to LA?
Ooh. To be honest, the best party I've been to in LA was actually when we won the World Series in 2018. I wasn't a LA native at the time.
Really nice.
Yeah, I wasn't an LA native at the time, but that party after we won the World Series, LA definitely knows how to party. It was great. It was
really.
great.
Was it a who's who in the attendance? And you just give us a kind of a brief.
To be honest, I really don't remember.
Fair enough.
Hey, leave it there.
Yeah, it was fun.
Are you currently in LA today, or are you in Nashville, or?
No, I'm in. What's crazy is I'm in Houston. I just pulled up to the house. I have some bowling tournaments going on.
Oh, absolutely.
So I flew down, and I'm gonna spend the week here, bowling some tournaments, hang out with some friends, and bring in the New Year's. I do this every year, so
okay.
I always come here and hang out and whatnot.
Mookie Betts, our guest on OutKick 360, AL MVP, a two-time World Series winner, Dodgers outfielder. Mookie, the MVP season for you, and now as you look through the lineup with your Dodgers teammates and all of the MVP caliber talent that you have, what is it like playing in this lineup?
It's so much fun. I mean, obviously there's no pressure at all. You just have, like you said, MVP caliber people everywhere. I mean, not even like the whole team is, I think some guys kind of get overlooked, and, I understand. But, it's just night in and night out. I feel like we have, one of the best team on the field, and it's just fun. I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that. I mean, up and down the organization, everybody wants to win. So we constantly have those pieces in the lineup for us. And so it's just fun, man. LA has been a great time.
How do you feel about the automatic strike zone and all the discussion there that they're trying to test out in the minors? And do you, as a player that comes through in the clutch on the regular, how do you feel about knowing that you would have an automatic ball and strike zone behind you versus the human error element of baseball?
Oh man, I'll do either, because we could get as athletes, you would get used to either one. But if I had a choice, if I had a vote, I would definitely say keep the human element of the game. I just enjoy that, and if a guy's missing one side of the plate, you can use it to your advantage, or, maybe that's the reason why you lost. Whatever it is, I just enjoy the human side of games, because, sports really in general has just went so technical and so analytical that you just kind of lose touch with the whole sport. It's kind of sucks, but, it's just where life is kind of going towards.
Yeah, and Eddie, I mean, he's describing the NFL, really, with all the reviews now.
Yeah, the reviews are they still get it wrong, too.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, you still watch those games. Hey, Mook, we know that it's bowl season right now. You love watching football. Kind of give us your synopsis on the playoff that's about to happen here this week. Ohio State playing against Georgia, TCU against Michigan, and who you think the winner is going to be?
You know what? Somebody asked me this question the other day, and nobody to me can beat Georgia. I feel like they're just men amongst boys. And that's no disrespect to anyone, because everyone out there is very good. But Georgia to me, it's crazy.
So you're taking Georgia to win the national championship?
Yeah, I don't see how. I'm not saying that they're unbeatable, but they unbeatable.
So you're not giving my boys you're not giving the Buckeyes a shot at all. Come up this weekend. It's Friday.
Eddie, I love you, bro. If you were playing, maybe.
Maybe. Wow. He said,
Maybe.
Not even for sure. Maybe.
Mook, hey, don't let him fool you. He's hesitant to even go to Atlanta for the game this weekend. He's trying to contemplate whether or not to just stay back and watch it or go. And normally, the confident Eddie George would be on the sideline or up in a suite. He'd have a whole suite purchased.
Well, that's because it's supposed to rain. I want to get caught in the rain in traffic.
We're talking about a dome, too.
Oh, my God.
Amazing.
Nah, you're a Buckeye at heart, bro. You got it. Rain,
Rains
sleet,
through the snow, right?
whatever.
Yeah, I know.
By the way, just a side note, the storyline of Stetson Bennett has been completely overlooked. Mookie's mentioning Georgia. He won the title last year. No one wanted him to go to the college football playoff starting after the performance in the SEC championship game. And here he is with a chance. I mean, not only can he win his second, he's about to have a statue built in his honor in Athens if he does.
I know.
That's
It's
crazy to think
remarkable.
about.
It is. I mean, he's had a hell of a career. Man, he is. I mean, his arm talent is decent,
I
right?
mean, yeah.
But his leadership and his decision making at quarterback is flawless. And he has a great supporting cast. I mean, he's great offensive line, D-line, great receivers. But for him to run the show and make you appreciate it, especially now being a head coach, you find that at quarterback, that's all you want. You know, to manage the game and to keep the chains moving and make great decisions.
Mookie Betts has been our guest. Final thing on the way out, Mookie, the fact that Aaron Judge staying with the Yankees, I've been saying it's great for baseball, first and foremost, that he's staying in New York, but he's also not coming to the NL, and he's not playing for the Giants. So I know you've got to be pumped about that.
Yeah, he can stay on the other coast. It'd have been great. It'd have been great having him, but no, it's good. I'm glad he stayed, man. Like you said, it's really good for baseball, and there's a lot going on, but that's step one. So,
hey, and props to you. I know there's several other guys who do this, but I've noticed you've been mic'd up before during the game. I want more of that as a baseball fan. I love that. I don't know how you guys. I don't know how you stay focused in the moment with all that, pitch by pitch. But as long as they're asking you guys to do it, I hope that the players will continue to do that because that gives a different insight and a different feel for what we would normally get.
Yeah, I think that should. Well, that'll continue.
Have you ever been distracted?
Oh yeah, a lot. but luckily, I've missed. Yeah, you get distracted by everything out there. Sometimes it gets bored. You get bored out there. It is what it is.
Mookie Betts has been our guest. Good luck with the bowling events that are going on, man. Thank you for the time, and hopefully we'll see you next time you're here in Nashville.
Yes, sir. Thank you. See you guys.
Hey, Mook, thanks for coming through, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Of course. I'll holler at you later on, bro.
There's Mookie Betts, Dodgers outfielder, MVP, great at everything.
Yes.
I'd like to have an acting competition between you and Mook.
Oh, I think I could get Mook an acting deal. I think I could. But knowing him, he rises to the occasion on everything he does. Everything the dude is
he's clutch.
He is clutch. And his mother, I see where he gets it from.
Okay.
She is super competitive, and I see where he gets the trash talk from. She will go in on you in a heartbeat, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Mrs. Betts is no joke. I don't want to deal with her at all. But no, it's a good family though.
Eddie, a little behind the scenes here. Everybody in the studio behind the scenes can vouch for this. We've been here going on 2 years now in this studio.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, we've had people come up and shout at this door trying to get a photo.
Are you kidding? They don't do it for
every
you
now and
regularly?
then they'll peer in, and mainly because Chad's sitting there, they'll peer in like, hey, who's this Withrow guy? But with you, I mean, you got autograph seekers out here apparently, or just a bunch of drunks.
Well, yeah, I mean, they came at holidays. They're coming in, getting some moonshine.
I've made you nervous now.
Some
we have a side entrance.
Cherries.
You can,
right.
On your way out, we'll pick you up at the door out here.
Nah, but it's been good though, man. I really enjoyed coming down here. I enjoy shooting the breeze with you, talking sports and all types of stuff. Running backs.
I'm very
movies.
grateful for you.
Yeah,
it's always a blast. So when we come back, as we wrap up the show, we have Eddie's going to tell us what's coming up on his calendar, which is jammed, packed with things. But you had a story for us about purchasing Jim Brown a suit.
Yes.
We wrap up the show
with that.
with the time Eddie had to buy Jim Brown a suit, and I wonder what Jim Brown thought of it. That's next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests, because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about, like, do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy is literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it, and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out, because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
Been a blast today on OutKick 360. Eddie George sitting in as the guest co-host today. We've got Jeff Fisher in the seat tomorrow. J. Pierre and Sivia will be with us on Thursday. And who am I leaving? Oh, Keith Bullock. How could I forget Keith Bullock?
KB. Yes.
He gets back. So they've got the Yankee Stadium. His Syracuse is playing in the Yankee Stadium for the bowl game, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on Thursday. He returns Friday, hopefully in a great mood. But Bullock's always in a great mood.
Oh, yeah,
He'll be
he's
with
always
us on
Chef Bully, I call him.
Chef Bully. He's quite the chef.
Yes, he is.
Another
Yes, he
Renaissance man. All right, Eddie, you once purchased a suit for Jim Brown.
Oh, by accident.
Oh, by accident.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You had a picture of the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And when it was here in Nashville, I was doing some events for it, and it was a 2-day deal. So I had a couple suits that I was wearing, and I think the day that I called the pick, I had on a really nice suit. I mean, it was decked out, sharp, and got a couple compliments from Dion and
oh, you know it's good. If that's
yeah,
the
Dion said, "Oh, man, you look sharp. Boy, you look so dirty and clean." So
the prime approval.
Prime approval, right? And Jim is there, and Jim was like, "Man, that suit is amazing, man." And I'm like, you know what? It's coming from Jim Brown. That is quite a compliment. I said, "Hey, Jim." Yeah, I said, you know what, man? Thank you for the compliment. I might buy you one just for that. He says, "Oh, so really?" He says, "Well, who did it?" So I shot him the information of the young lady that made the suits and didn't think anything of it, right?
Yeah.
So about 2 months later, I get a call from her. He's like, "Eddie, I have a bill for you for a couple of suits, and these are expensive suits." Right? I'm like,
I have no doubt.
So I'm like, who the hell? Who had the gall, the audacity to send me a bill for their suits?
Oh.
Like, who did this? Who's responsible for this? I'm pissed off. I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing it. But I was curious, who? Jim Brown. I was like, oh. I said, hey, why not? I said, he's my father's favorite running back, the greatest player of all time.
Wow.
Why not? I'll buy him a suit. I said, but you got to give me half off. I said the entire bill.
Buy one, get one free.
You buy one, get one free. Oh, man. But it was an honor to do it. And,
this is Eddie remembering that he's on a show that's
yes.
It's going to be archived.
I said it was an honor to do it, and if it's Jim Brown, it's Jim Brown, and I said yes, it'll be my gift to Jim.
Wow.
And a great story to say, hey, I bought Jim Brown a suit.
How much did it run you?
It was quite the penny. It was very.
What's
expensive.
the most you've ever paid for a suit?
Oh God, do I have to do that? Oh man,
I want to live vicariously through you. That's why I ask you these questions. Everyone in studio and watching and listening.
In my prime, I mean, I used to love suits, and I bought a lot of clothes. I would say, 1 year, I'm embarrassed to say that I spent about close to a couple $100,000 on clothes.
And how often would you wear them?
Not often. Lesson learned.
There's a lot of guys now, man, that they wear that one time for their road trip, and I never see it again.
And never again. I mean, you got to mix and match those things. Listen, you start changing up the pants with
there's
the shirt.
There's a trick to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get stuff that's. Listen, you get a blue, a brown, a black,
and a gray.
And then you get dress shirts and ties and accessories, and you dress coat and pant and jeans, and you just make 30,000 different outfits out of 4 or 5 different suits.
Well, what Eddie paid on suits back in the day is what a player can get for entering the transfer portal now.
Oh man,
there you go. It's wide open.
There it is, wide open.
Is it as crazy for you with the HBCU as it is elsewhere in college football?
It is. It has a trickle-down effect. We're finding that players it's free agency, and you're literally going from one team to the next in search of what? I'm not sure. Could be opportunity, could be more an NIL deal, it could be cost of attendance. But the landscape of college football has completely changed over the last 5 to 7 years because They're not necessarily playing for, excuse me, championships or to be legends in the game. It's about what I can get now in terms of my dollar value, and if I go,
how it's going to benefit them
immediately versus
the team.
A team thing, which has been very challenging during these times. But in terms of finding talent, there are almost 2,000 players in the portal,
and there's not enough spots for them.
There's not enough spots. So when the music stops, somebody's not going to have a chair.
Does that benefit you though?
Oh, it does.
Oh, okay.
It does benefit us because now we can really vet out, find the right person, the right player, the right character, the right fit, and really be thoughtful about it and going after these players because there's a lot of players that are out there, looking for a home.
What do you have coming up on your schedule?
Man,
which is always busy.
Listen, when I leave here, I'm still on my Christmas vacation. This is my cheat time of the year, so I'm gonna go find some chocolate chip cookies. Nice. And then I'm gonna go relax, watch some ball games, man, chill out. Enjoy the year. I got to decompress before I jump back into this thing again.
You may have already known this, but in the final minute, I just want to throw this out there. Brett McMurphy says that former University of Miami NFL star Ed Reed, another good friend of yours, he's the next coach at Bethune-Cookman.
Really? Nice. Did
you know this?
I had no idea.
Okay.
I had no idea, but it's. I can see it though. I can see it.
A lot of former players are jumping into the coaching world now.
Yeah, well, Ed's been a part of Miami
right.
for their organization or their program for the longest, even after he's finished playing, and he's always had an interest in being a coach. I can recall having a conversation with him at my event about that very thing.
He lives ball.
And he's going to do an exceptional job at Bethune-Cookman.
Same as you at TSU.
My man.
Thank you, man,
Appreciate
as always.
it. All
Eddie
right.
George, the Renaissance man, has been our guest co-host. Join us tomorrow. Jeff Fisher. Chris Long will be one of our guests tomorrow on the show, and we're talking all things ball. College, we'll get you ready for the playoff. NFL playoffs just around the corner as well. A lot to discuss on OutKick 360. Hope you'll join us at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central, right here across the OutKick network.